Believers, welcome to today's episode of Trundlebed Tales. We're going to look back at Laura Ingalls Wilder fandom during 2025. Welcome to Trundlebed Tales, the podcast about Laura Ingalls Wilder, historic food waste, one-room schools, and other social history. This is Sarah Utoff, the host and creator of Trundlebed Tales. Find us all around the web under Trundlebed Tales and on your favorite social media platform. If you listen or just have an account on a podcast system, please leave positive feedback because that helps people find the show. And today's episode, we are going to be looking back at 2025. And yes, I normally like to do these, ideally in December, so it is quite a ways off. But I think I've got things running smooth now, and I hope that I will have at least one full episode in addition to my catch-up episodes for the rest of the year. So hopefully that'll happen. This was actually the very first episode I did of my podcast was along the same theme, that it was what had happened the previous year. I wouldn't recommend that episode because I was half sick and was going to cancel it because of the time. And I just said, if I cancel it, I'll never get it started. So I went ahead and did it. Not a good episode at all. But today's, I hope, will be a lot better. Before I get started, I do want to just give everybody a reminder, and this is the last time I'll do it at the beginning of the episode, but my regular podcast provider distribution place that I used, Blog Talk Radio, is kaput. So I am now on to Podbean, which is the site that they recommended going to. But there was a problem. When I connected things over to the various platforms, some of them just went ahead and took control of the regular system and were fine. Some of them created a second account, even though both were called Trundlebed Tales and everything. I really don't know how their systems can let that happen, but they did. So if what you see is a picture of me without any writing on it, and the episodes don't have any from 2026, you're looking at the old feed. If you're looking at one that has my picture of my face and it says Trundlebed Tales on the actual icon, and it has 2026 episodes, that is the current one. So if you just happened upon this episode and think you're subscribed, but you haven't been getting episodes lately, that is why. So you can find the new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, Podchaser, Boomplay, YouTube, and Podbean. If you find it someplace else, please let me know so I can get it added to the list. And with that, what happened in 2025? Well, if you're wanting to know what people were interested in Laura fandom, every year I do a blog post. So I have my top 30 most viewed posts of 2025. There'll be a link in the show notes about this. It's also already on my blog. But I wanted to call out some specific ones because they showed up near the top of my views many times all year. Sometimes you'll have things that there's just one big push and then nothing more. But in these, they kept coming back. And so ones that got a lot of views this year, Little House on the Prairie cast books, which I went through and put a post with all of the books that have been published by the various cast members of the NBC Little House on the Prairie series. I just added a new one. Be sure to follow that up if you like the TV show. Where's Pa's Fiddle gets a lot of views, and it goes from talking about Pa's Real Fiddle, which is down in Mansfield, Missouri, to The fiddle that Michael Landon really played, and with very little skill at it, fooled an awful lot of people. And also a shout out to the 50th event recreation in Simi Valley. No, they did not have any kind of real fiddle. That is one that gets a lot of hits. I also have a link on there to a post about the recordings of Pa's fiddle, so you can actually listen to Pa's fiddle without having to see it. Another one that got a lot of hits was Frontier House and Laura Ingalls Wilder. This was kind of an odd thing. I was trying to find a quote, failed. I ended up looking a whole bunch of places. I watched the Frontier House show again. I got the book and looked at it, and I just could not find this quote. So I did find two other quotes that mentioned Laura. I think the one I was remembering was from a article about the show, and I've got that quote in there. I've still got one more place I can look that I want to do as a follow-up I found after I posted this. But anyway, I go through, and there's twice in the TV show Frontier House where they mention Laura Ingalls Wilder. It got a lot of hits this year, I think, because they had released a follow-up series without ever saying it was a follow-up series called Back to the Frontier. Uses the same music, the same voiceover. The concept has changed a little bit, but I have a link to that one that talks about Back to the Frontier in general and also talks specifically about Laura connections. Also, another one that has hit up all over the place is Wilson Rawls. And this I am not shocked at, because despite the fact that Wilson Rawls wrote Where the Red Fern Grows and Summer of the Monkeys, he has a disturbingly small amount of information about him out there. I really just I can't believe it. It is, why is there not a biography about this guy? There's even archives. You can go and just look at the archives. Please, someone write a book about this guy. But anyway, the hit about him is on there. I have continued to do work promoting him just because there should be something. So this year I was able, I'm not sure if it was 2026 or 2025, but anyway, I found a recording of his speech, and I've got a whole blog post about that and where you can listen to it, and another one about the booklet about his life, and a library who got an award it didn't deserve down in Oklahoma. So, and then the last one is James Wilder's first wife, which it still gets a lot of hits. It's sort of an open secret at this point, though I had never heard about it really until I made my trip to Malone, but I've got the whole lot of information about it there, thanks to Sharon John, who gave me most of it. Another big thing for this year, unusually, I got to do one of my Thanksgiving programs and my Christmas program. Now, I very rarely get to do both holiday programs in the same year, so that was cool to get to have that happen. I worked with my YouTube channel this year. I didn't get as many videos uploaded as I hoped, but I did have at least one video or short shared every month, and I hope to be able to up that this year. I actually just got a video published, a full long one, this a week, and I am in the process of editing one, I hope, for next week. So it's looking good. Other events. The Laura Pelosi Conference was held in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the next one will be held in 2027. Laura Christmas plays returned at various theaters around the country after a year of absolutely no Christmas productions. A Laura Ingalls Wilder Christmas by Laurie Brooks was staged in Mitchell, South Dakota, and A Little House Christmas by James DeVita was staged in West Plains, Missouri. And this is a rare one, you don't see much, Melodies and Memories of Laura Ingalls Wilder by Laurie Fletcher Florence was staged in Roseville, California. There were also productions of Little House on the Prairie, the musical, but not as exclusively. The last year before that, there was not one Laura Christmas play that I could find. Now, I will just briefly mention that I find the plays catch as catch can. I have tried to set up a connection with the people who own the rights to tell me when they sell the rights so I can follow up on the theaters. That does not happen. So if you see any kind of Laura Ingalls Wilder play in production near you, please tell me so I can look at the list. New Laura Ingalls Wilder events. There were three new Laura events held this year. They were in the Heritage Village Museum, Sharonville, Ohio, the Century Village Museum, and I'm sorry, Yaga County Historical Society, Burton, Ohio, and the Dade Battlefield Historic State Park in Bushnell, Florida. I'm really glad to see this trend reversing and seeing new Laura events come. The Dade County one in Florida is especially nice because that's an area that really hasn't had a lot of Laura events traditionally, though it does have a geographic connection. They had scheduled it once. It was canceled by a hurricane. They had it in 2025, and they've actually already had it in 2026. So I think this seems like it's an established, ongoing institution now, and I am very glad to hear it. Now, I do not touch in politics on this show, but I'm going to make a minor exception. There was a provision in the Big Beautiful Bill for the National Garden of American Heroes. They are currently looking for space to put it along the Potomac River. I mention it here because when President Trump first proposed this idea in his first term, Laura Ingalls Wilder was listed as one of the heroes he planned to honor. Proposals for the artists who were wanting to do one of the statues closed July 1st, 2025. I have not heard any further news. So, what was going on around the country? In Pepin, Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Historical Society put Pepin on the History Makers Tour, which is a great thing because they had previously been really well connected with the State Historical Society, and that has fallen away over the years. So, I hope this is a sign they're able to work on rebuilding that connection. Allison Arngrim, who played the NBC series Nellie Olson, was their guest speaker at Laura Days. Just since I'm mentioning Allison anyway, this year, 2026, she's going to be at Burr Oak, Iowa for their Laura Days. And I am going to be there too with my travel buddy Kelly, and we are looking forward to it. Independence, Kansas had the 200th anniversary of Dr. Tan's birthday this year, and they added a second day to their Carrie Ingalls birthday celebration, which is always a good sign. They call it usually Prairie Days, and they have continued to call it Days with an S, even though it's only been one for these many years. And so to have a second day added back was real nice. Burr Oak, Iowa. Now they have remodeled the Mercantile Building and opened it in July 2025. This is the building that was on the corner next to the museum that looked like a general store because it was a general store. And they've now taken over that floor space and made it so they can use it for their various museum displays and the gift shop. I think they are, well, first they have to get what they've done so far paid off, but I think there's going to be more work on the actual display part itself, but I'm so glad it's open. And they added a Laura Ingalls Wilder Christmas event. They have done one a couple of times in the past, but I was glad to see they did another one. It's been quite a while. Walnut Grove, Minnesota. The museum raised money for the Depot building. The Depot holds the main exhibits for Laura in the books and in the NBC TV show. It was repainted, got new gutters, and has new shingles. The exterior of the jail cell was painted because that's really very nice. They have what used to be the local jail cell, just the cell itself sitting out in the grounds. And that kind of, you have to be on it with keeping the finish good if you aren't going to put it in something. The museum started a summer storytime program where they had a story time for either local kids or kids passing through once a week, which I thought was really nice. There was also continuing work on bathrooms at the pageant. They got the cement floor poured this fall, and I think if any luck at all, they'll have them open this year for the event. That is not a promise. I do not know that for sure, but they've got the cement poured, and I think that's really great. That building has needed replaced. It needed to be made ADA compliant. I'm glad they have, and if you have the little extra Laura money to tuck in somewhere and you plan to ever go to Walnut Grove, Minnesota, help pay for these bathrooms. They need them. Now, they had another bad rain year in 2025. The Walnut Grove pageant grounds were flooded, but not nearly as bad as it was in 2018. 2018 was when there was no road to the pageant grounds because there was this huge collapse in the actual road. You could not get to the pageant grounds with a wheeled vehicle for quite a while. But they did get 7 to 8 inches of rain over 2 days and did once again have to deal with flooding issues. The Walnut Grove pageant has been sharing information out of old pageant programs on their social media. If you are interested in the history of the pageant, there is actually a book on the history of the pageant, but you can also find these programs, and if you back up a bit on their Facebook page and their Twitter page and around there. Traditionally, Walnut Grove has had an event on the Saturday of each pageant weekend. The idea being we've got these people here for the pageant. The pageant isn't till tonight. You've got more people than you can put in the museum. What are you going to do with them? And so they did something that's equivalent to the kind of days events that they have in little towns, like beef days we have here, St. Jude Sweet Corn. It's that kind of thing. And they have all sorts of tents with antique sales and food and games and a Little Miss Laura contest. And it is traditionally been the family festival. It's now called the Walnut Grove Village Fair. I think that there was probably some differences of opinion. They tried to move it to the actual museum grounds for a year while we were there. I'm not sure if they tried it again a second year or not. And I think there were some harsh feelings there. So I think new people are running it now, but I'm not entirely sure. But the Walnut Grove Village Fair is now held on the Saturday of each pageant weekend. The authors of the book Little House Life Hacks, Angie Bailey and Susie Schubert, appeared at the museum for one of the pageant weekends. I was kind of surprised. It didn't seem like there was much in the way of notice of this coming at all. And I have worked, volunteered, and dealt with museums for the vast majority of my life, and I don't understand why they don't tell people what they're going to do. I mean, it's one thing even when you were depending on, the television station and the radio station and that kind of thing, because you don't have any control of that, but you have control of your website. You have control of your social media. You have control of your newsletter. Once you have something nailed down, why do you not just tell people? And I know I'm saying this under Walnut Grove. I don't mean to I don't mean to single them out. I could say the same thing about the Hoover Presidential Library. I follow their social media on various channels. I read their newsletter, and I still miss events because they did not say anything about them. I mean, it's a really bad thing in the museum world. But anyway, they did not give us much in the way of heads up about this. But if you are interested, I don't know if they'll have them back or not. But they are the authors of Little House Life Hacks. It's kind of a comedy, general life thing book. One of the authors does a social engagement for Melissa Gilbert's Modern Prairie brand. And that probably tells you all you need to know about it. Palmer Hitzdorf was the curator at the museum that he's leaving. Nellie's Restaurant, which, if you are someone who's ever been to Walnut Grove or even thought about going to the real Walnut Grove, there is a small mom and pop restaurant there right on the edge of the highway. And it looks like the kind of place that you would have. Well, it looks like the kind of place that would have been about everywhere if you went to small towns in the 70s, in the 1970s. And it's a really cute building. They have a great sign that says Nellie's, and the people who had it retired. Then the people who retired, they sold it to the granddaughter of the person who had originally opened the restaurant. And she really could not make a go of it. And it closed December 2024. Well, she really couldn't give up the ghost and started trying to get more money and reopened it in 2025 and then closed it again in June of 2025, and it's still closed. And I think this is one of those things where this is a great thing to have, but you really need local support. And there are other restaurants in town. This is sort of on the edge of town. And I think the building needs, if it's going to stay going, the building needs a lot of updating. They have a bathroom that I really cannot even describe. It is got, some of those nonsense polygons, they have you look at it math sometimes where there's like part of it is around the corner from the rest of it. It's shaped kind of like that. And there's just no, it needs work. It needs solid work if it's going to reopen. And I don't know that anyone's going to think that it's worth the money, because if you buy the place, you're buying the name and the location. And it's been closed long enough now that you don't have any people that would just automatically come back. I'm afraid we really have seen the end of Nellie's Restaurant, and I am very sorry about that. But, well, can only keep an eye out. And I'm very sorry the woman lost so much money, because I think she did lose a huge amount of money. I do still have my Nellie's Restaurant t-shirt, though. The worst loss for Walnut Grove in 2025 was that Shirley Knox passed away on October 18th. Now, I have a link in the blog post that goes with this to the. I had recently been going through stuff, and I had found my speeches that I did for the announcements of the presenting people with the Laura Ingalls Wilder Legacy and Research Association Award. Shirley, and I linked to Shirley's in this and to her obituary, and I've got a picture of her playing the pump organ there at the museum in the write-up for this. Dismet, the latest Dismet event, featured Dean Butler, Almanza Wilder, Wendy Luley, who was half of Baby Grace, and Charlotte Stewart, who was Miss Beadle. Dismet has kind of an interesting tradition with events. They tend to have a big event occasionally. They did one for the long winter anniversary. They had Garth Williams come back, and Bill Anderson was there, Barbara Walker. They've had one they started, I'd have to look up the date, but they started talking about it. This is one a counter example. They had started talking about this event a long ways out. Online, we just started calling it the Dismet event because they really didn't name it. I organized a dinner at that first one. There was a second one that I deliberately didn't go to because of schedule conflicts. And then this one, which I did not realize was as big an event as it actually was. No, that isn't right. The second one I went to the second one some years later, and they had another one, and they didn't give near the buildup they do for this because I think this was really one of those big deals, but not they didn't say so early enough that I could get the schedule changed. So I ended up not going this last time, and I'm very sorry. The old Laura Ingalls Wilder Elementary in DeSmet, the demolition was almost completed in 2025. There is a new Laura Ingalls Wilder Elementary building. The Main Street update is nearly finished. They have been taking Calumet, which is the main street, through the heart of DeSmet, which is wide even by small town, T-shaped town models. It's a hugely wide street, and they've been working on redoing that. Part of it was making things work, with water pipes and new curbs that are ATA compliant. And part of it was to make things, well, to kind of improve functions. And they added sculptures and a sculpture kind of walk. I am anxious to see what it turned out like. I don't think they quite have it finished now, but it's close. There's also a new mural of the prairie by Cheyenne Renee that was unveiled on Calumet Avenue and 2nd Street. The Highway 14 trail fundraising is to a point where they plan on interviewing contractors to roll out in the spring. So the idea is this: they're creating a walking path to go by the highway. It's part of a longer extension across the state they're working on. But this particular part is going to have a tower where you can go and see Silver Lake from a place that you are allowed to be at and not kind of just going through, but to a place where you're supposed to be able to park and walk up the tower and actually see Silver Lake, which I think is a great idea. They had I think it was an international contest because they got involved with some group. And so there was, like, I think they showed us 10 different versions various architects had did. And they've got one of those picked, and they're to the point now where they think they have the money that they can get at least started on getting it built. The Prairie Fire Bar and Grill is now open at the Country Club, but they're not doing a dining room at this point in 2025. The Country Club has been a great place to go and eat if you're there for a Laura event because it's quieter. You don't have as many people from away know that it's there to go to it. So it's just kind of a nice center of calm. And I'm sorry it's closed right now. They've also been having various going into and going out of business things going on there. But it looks like the restaurant is open, and I have not heard of it closing again. So fingers crossed, Prairie Fire Bar. After over 40 years of running Ward's store, this was the store that is the corner lot. Well, it's kind of right in the heart of downtown DeSmet. It's sort of near where the Loftus store is, but it's a big corner lot. It's a big store. It used to be more of a general selection store, and they have been leaning a little bit more into the food production there since Patty has left. The new owners renamed it the Covered Wagon Cafe and Bakery. So I think that's where their focus is going to be more. I also wish them luck. In 2025 was the 75th anniversary of the Harvey Dunn exhibit. Harvey Dunn, who was Grace's nephew by marriage, he was the nephew of her husband, was a very well-known artist. He has his own stamp. He was one of 6 artists selected by the U.S. government to go and record World War I through doing paintings and drawings and that kind of thing. And he was very loyal to South Dakota. He worked out on the East Coast, but every summer he came back to Manchester and visited his relatives and enjoyed getting to live on the prairie again for a bit. And he'd make a lot of sketches. And then he'd go home, and over the winter for fun, he'd do these paintings. But nobody in the East Coast was really interested in these paintings. And so he said he was friends with Aubrey Sherwood, who at that time ran the DeSmet News. And he said, well, you've got these paintings. Let's do a display here in DeSmet. And they did. And it got such an incredible response. People were driving for days to get here to go see this event. It was because of how well it was received that Harvey Dunn then said, okay, I'm going to give almost all of these paintings to the state of South Dakota with the proviso that you build a museum to house them. That's how come there is a South Dakota State Art Museum there in Brookings. I guess I must not follow them as close as other places because I had missed this. They not only have this phenomenal Harvey Dunn collection, they also put together themed displays throughout the year. And this one was they took all the paintings from that original display, took the photographs of how they were on display, and recreated that in their gallery. And oh my gosh, I wish I'd been able to see it. That just was such a great idea. But just because you couldn't see that display doesn't mean you can't see another one. And I strongly recommend if you are going to DeSmet and you have any way to do it, stop by the South Dakota Art Museum too. Besides having Dunn's work, they also have Paul Goebel, who was a big children's illustrator in the 1970s, and various other collections, and they're always doing displays, and it is so worth it. 2025 was also the 35th anniversary of the Prairie Manor, which is for many years had the title from me of being my favorite bed and breakfast anywhere. It has since lost that title to the Weaver Inn in Mansfield, Missouri, but it's a close second. I haven't been there under the current owners. I had on the two previous. It is a great place. A little pricey, great place. This was also the 5th anniversary of the Kingsbury Journal. Its manager, since its launch, Cheryl Downs, retired. If you are unaware, a lot of small towns depend on their newspaper. Their newspaper, the grocery store, and the school are what you really need to have a functioning town. And the people in Kingsbury County felt the loss of the DeSmet News and the Lake Preston, was the Journal? I think it was it must have been the Lake Preston Journal, that they decided to create a co-op and to create the news that way. So this newspaper built on the shoulders of these two other titles of newspapers that they did get all the access to all the old stuff. They put together a new publication called the Kingsbury Journal. I've had a couple articles published in it. They have a regular Laura's Corner. They've done a lot of phenomenal work and set a great example. The Ingalls Homestead also in 2025 worked on improving their walking trails as well as with all these other big things going on. Spring Valley, they tend to have lots of small fundraisers added throughout the year. I recommend if you think you're going, maybe contact them ahead of time if you're looking for when to go and want to hit a little extra burst of interesting stuff going on. Check for their fundraisers because they do pop up. Spring Valley, Minnesota is where Mother and Father Wilder moved to after they left Malone, and then Laura and Manly came back and lived there about a year after Manly was recovering from his illness. Nearby, I thought it was very cool because they had this historic state park. It was called Historic Forestville, and they had a general store that had been a company store. And when the guy who owned it decided to shut down the operations he was using the company store for, he just locked the door. And so they have this incredible, authentic general store that they just opened the door and there everything was again. So they, I'm sure, have worked on it much more than that, but that's really what it felt like. They did great historic tours, really enjoyed it, tried to recommend it to people if they were doing a swing through Spring Valley. But sadly, partly it's just how parks are going right now. A lot of historic sites, the number of people attending events in general, the kind of events that used to keep these museums going, has just dropped. Now, I don't mean that just for history events, it's kind of all events. The number of events and people attending them is much lower than it used to be. I think there was actually some political stuff going on with this, but I don't live there, so I can't really comment knowledgeably at all. But in any case, the historic Forestville Park ending their interpretive tours, and I'm very sorry to hear it. Mansfield, Missouri, were able to finally replace the roof on the Rock House, which is pretty impressive because they weren't just trying to slap a roof on there. They wanted one as accurate as possible, and they have done a very nice job. I've done a post about that previously, and there's a link on the page that goes with this. It was also the 50th anniversary of Wilder Days, all these 50ths, and I didn't make a one of them. But they, for Wilder Days, they had Dean Butler, Charlotte Stewart, and Wendy Lou Lee again, as I had mentioned for the DeSmet event. They also had the annual Laura Ingalls Wilder Children's Literature Festival. And the winner this time, Natalie Bose Perkins, is both a children's author who does some really nice work. She is also a big Laura fan, and I'm very glad she won. Malone, New York, the big thing I got from them is they were selling lilacs from Wilder Homestead plants, which they believe are from actual ones that Mother Wilder had, and that is actually perfectly plausible. The Pomona Public Library from Pomona, California, uh, has one of the best collections of early Wilderiana anywhere. They unfortunately had some water damage and are currently under construction, and their Laura display is not open at this point, although apparently it was not badly damaged. So we will have to see what we can see. The Herbert Hoover National Historic Site and Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum. The Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum in West Branch, Iowa, is under construction. No word if the new design will include anything about Laura. I think it would be nice to at least have kind of they used to have this kind of traveling exhibit thing they took around, even if they just had something like that sitting there, which was like a, but it was basically a pillar with text and images on all the sides. That really would be. I just can't believe they don't have something like that. They do have a section in the gift shop, and that's supposed to be brand new too, so it'll be interesting to see what they have. In December, the Hoover National Historic Site did a Laura theme for the Christmas weekend. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of promotion ahead of time because the government shut down, so nothing could be confirmed until it was. But they did Christmas with Laura with Cindy Wilson, who wrote The Beautiful Snow, and I presenting. Every year, we look and see what Laura-related books have come out, and this time we've got two scholarly titles for 2025, a TV show related book, and a special Laura themed issue of a journal. So the latest journal of South Dakota History, volume 55, number 3, features articles with the Laura Ingalls Wilder theme. Nancy Tysted Copel's A Story in the Rough illuminates the little-known history behind the writing and publications of Wilder's posthumously released The First 4 Years. Next, in A Trip to Dakota, Cindy Wilson revives the narrative of an 1880 journey into Dakota Territory along the Missouri River, as told by two adventurous young women, Lizzie and Ruth Irish. At the time, their father, Charles Wood Irish was working as the lead surveyor for the Dakota Central Railroad, which paved the way for the Ingalls family to move to Dakota Territory. And the Irish family is actually really big here in Iowa City, which is right by where I live. And my great grandmother went to the business college that the family ran and graduated from it and actually worked at Mercy Hospital in town with her business degree from their business college, which actually I think is closer today what we would think of when you said community college or specialized high school more than what we really mean when we said business college today, but that's how they meant it then, which I think is cool. Yay, Nanny, shout out. Finally, the South Dakota Historical Society press director, Deidre McDonald Berzier, presents a historical musings about Rose Wilder Lane's contributions to the 20th century intellectual discourse. And that description is from their website. Previously, the issue that they had based on Laura, with Laura themed things, was in January 2023. Both volumes are still in stock. Too Good to Be Altogether Lost, Rediscovering Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House Books by is the Laura book that made the most noise this year. It focused on how the novels came to be lost in the sound and fury about the books, based on various adaptations, publicity assumptions, and personal attacks on Wilder. You can get it both as a regular book and as an Audible, and I must admit, I only recently finished the Audible one, and I have to say, the last chapter or two were by far the best in the book for me. I don't think I was the intended audience of the rest of it, so I don't know if it's fair to say, but honestly, it's worth a read. She makes such a good argument about Laura and Rose and the writing in the first 4 years. I am convinced. She convinced me. It is a good book. You should read it for that alone. The other big book we'd been waiting for a long time was Wilder Weather, What Laura Ingalls Wilder Teaches Us About the Weather, Climate, and Protecting What We Cherish by Barbara Boosted. Barb was a professional meteorologist and has been working on this from her PhD and talking about how you can measure winters. And so I'm glad it finally came out. It really looks at various winter weather through Laura's eyes. She actually was on this podcast a long time ago talking about this type of stuff. So I'm glad the book came out. Wendy Lou Lee, who is half of Baby Grace from NBC's Little House on the Prairie, is just bringing out a new devotional. This is her third book. The first was a devotional with a lot of focus on the TV show, and the second one is a memoir. This one is more focused on her spiritual journey or your spiritual journey, and it's called Story by Story. Since I mentioned earlier Audible, they not only have the Cherry Jones version of the Little House series audiobooks, but also several books about Laura, including Becoming Laura Ingalls Wilder by Johnny Miller, Selected Letters of Laura Ingalls Wilder edited by William T. Anderson. Last year, they added the first two books of Stephen Hines' reprint of the Laura's Missouri Ruralist articles on there, and there are other Laura books. The Too Good to Be Altogether Lost is on there too, and they have many cast member books from the NBC series. They also had added Diverging Roads by Rose Wilder Lane. This is the book that Roger Lee McBride took and did some light editing on and presented it as a biography of Rose's life. I don't think that that is accurate in any way, shape, or form. I don't know why he did it, with the possible exception that he really wanted there to be a biography without really caring that much about what was in it. But that's what he did. And now you can listen to the original if you want to. There were two documentaries about Laura or Little House that came out in 2025, but only one is currently available for purchase. And that one is Little House Homecoming, which explores the Laura Ingalls Wilder home sites with various members of the NBC Little House on the Prairie cast. You could watch it with a virtual ticket when it first came out, buy it on a DVD. You could get a poster and even an autograph poster with the cast members involved on it. It had a little bit of special additions on the DVD too. It was an interesting show, but it was a lot less interesting than what the director producer said his original idea for the series was, which his proposal that he talks about in one of the extras on the DVD was just that would have been fantastic to see. That is not what he actually ended up with. I'm not entirely sure that he understands that based on the interview, but it's still worth seeing, and it has some great drone shots of the Little House sites, which you don't normally see. Be aware that there were some incorrect things in it. They really should have had someone who's familiar with the sites watch it before they released it, because they would have been simple edits to fix. But with that said, it's a real nice documentary, and I bought a DVD of it. The other documentary was on Cozy TV, and it was used a lot of things about the 50th anniversary of the TV show reunions that was out in Simi Valley. It was also worth watching, but it is not currently available to buy. Apparently, there were rights issues that they got a one time. Well, they aired it more than once, so I don't know what it was, but they had a license that was a limited time license for the material used in it. So it is not currently available, but it is a very nice little show about what happened out there. Little House 50 for 50 podcast continued with a new format. This one addressing a new TV episode each week. A new TV show event was held in Greenfield, Indiana. A Little House in the Prairie cast reunion was held at the Columbia State Historic Park in California's Gold Country in June of 2025. The Little House cast reunion at Straight-Heron Historical Park in Simi Valley, California was from December 12th to the 14th, 2025. TV show cast events are being now handled by the Prairie Legacy Productions. It's under the oversight of Dean Butler and Allison Arngrim in partnership with Michael Davidson, who I know nothing about, and Jennifer Brayler, who does Dean's marketing. There was the first thing I think she was involved with, she had posted a clip where she was discovering that Almanzo's name is Almanzo and not Almanzo, and it was a big deal. And from that, she started working with the group and does a lot of the social media for that. Overall, this Prairie Legacy being involved will probably mean fewer events as opposed to what they had from the loose gravel events a few years ago. And we all probably know why that ended. You can find reports of it on my blog. But going forward, I think there's going to be fewer events, but those fewer events are going to be larger with more cast involvement and be more focused on historic sites, is what it seems like from this. In 2025, Netflix and Family Friendly Films shot a new version of Little House on the Prairie, the TV show. It is currently editing into a completely new Little House TV show. It hasn't released yet. They rolled out a trailer in April 2026, and it's scheduled for release July 9th, 2026. Other big things to know about 2025 was the 95th anniversary of Nancy Drew. A big conference was held in Toledo, Ohio in 2025. Toledo is where Mildred Wirt Benson lived, who wrote I don't remember the numbers off the head. She wrote something like 27 of the first 30 books in the series in the original version they came out. She was also from Iowa, so you know she's awesome, but she lived in Toledo. And one of the biggest Nancy Drew collectors has donated her collection to the Toledo Public Library, and it is, oh my gosh, incredible. I want to go for Nancy's 100th anniversary. They're going to have a conference again in Toledo, Ohio, and that is on my schedule for 2030, and it should be on yours too. And this year is the 250th anniversary of the country, July 4th, 2026, semi-quincentennial. I had been waiting for this for a long time, hoping that it would inspire more history awareness, interaction, appreciation. Sadly, it doesn't seem to have done so. 1976 wasn't the best organized either, but but there is a lot more kind of spontaneous stuff that showed up for it. Usually in one of these anniversary years, um, there's more kind of standard patriotism and events. We will have to see. 2026 is not over yet, but 2025 is, and so is this podcast looking back. I hope that we will have you again as we will be looking ahead on 2026 to what's going on in fandom this year. And with that, thank you for joining us on Trundlebed Tales, your favorite Laura Ingalls Wilder podcast since 2011, with host and creator Sarah Utoff, editor Sarah Utoff, producer Sarah Utoff, aka It's Just Me. Find me around the web under Trundlebed Tales, and be sure to brighten the corner where you are.